Daniel Brooks's hand connected with my face before I could finish explaining the discrepancy in our quarterly audit report. The crack echoed through the conference room like a whip, silencing the dozen department heads seated around the mahogany table. I felt the sting spread across my left cheek as 14 pairs of eyes stared at me in shock. All I had done was point out a missing $2.8 million in our client trust accounts. A simple mathematical error that any forensic accountant would catch during a routine review. But Daniel didn't want anyone catching his errors. The chief financial officer sat frozen at the head of the table. The HR director's mouth hung open. Our entire executive team watched as Daniel straightened his tie and smoothed his hair like he had just swatted a mosquito. Meeting adjourned, he announced coldly, his voice steady as if striking employees was part of his daily routine. His dark eyes met mine for a moment, challenging me to respond, daring me to make this worse for myself. I didn't scream. I didn't touch my burning cheek. I didn't even blink. I simply gathered my papers, stood up, and walked toward the door. My heels clicked against the marble floor as 14 people watched me leave without a single word of support. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I pulled out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady as I dialed. My voice was calm when he answered on the second ring. "Dad, are you still in Chicago? I need you to come to my office immediately. Bring your badge." My name is Isabella, and for 3 years I had been the invisible forensic accountant in the corner office of Pinnacle Financial Services. I analyzed numbers, traced money trails, and caught discrepancies that others missed. I was good at my job. Too good, apparently. Most people at Pinnacle didn't know much about my family background. They saw a quiet professional who kept her head down and delivered perfect reports. They didn't know my father was Special Agent Roberto of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They didn't know I grew up learning how to spot money laundering over Sunday dinners. Daniel Rivera thought he was untouchable. Senior Vice President of Client Services, the CEO's golf buddy, master of office politics. He controlled budgets, bonuses, and careers with an iron fist. For 3 years, I had watched him manipulate numbers, intimidate subordinates, and eliminate anyone who got too close to his schemes. I wasn't planning to expose him today. I was still building my case, collecting evidence piece by piece. Every suspicious transaction, every altered document, every intimidated witness. I documented everything with the patience of someone who knew that financial crimes investigations require bulletproof evidence. But when Daniel Brooks slapped me in front of witnesses, he handed me the one thing I had been waiting for. Clear evidence of workplace violence. A federal crime with a room full of witnesses. He just wrote his own arrest warrant. The culture at Pinnacle Financial was poison, and Daniel Brooks was the source. I had been documenting his abuse for months, watching him destroy careers and manipulate accounts with impunity. Like when he forced Jennifer in compliance to sign off on suspicious wire transfers by threatening to fire her during her husband's cancer treatment. She approved transactions she knew were questionable because she couldn't afford to lose her health insurance. Or when he stole credit for Daniel's brilliant risk assessment algorithm, presenting it to the board as his own innovation while giving Daniel a negative performance review for lack of original thinking. Daniel quit 2 weeks later, crushed and defeated. Then there was the systematic harassment of Maria in audit. Daniel Brooks made her work impossible by constantly changing requirements, withholding information, and criticizing her work in front of clients. When she finally complained to HR, Daniel Brooks retaliated by blocking her promotion and spreading rumors about her competence. She transferred to our Denver office just to escape him. I saw it all. I saved every email Daniel Brooks thought was deleted. I recorded conversations when legally possible in our state's one-party consent jurisdiction. I kept detailed logs of every suspicious transaction, every altered report, and every act of retaliation. I even figured out how to correlate his behavior with specific financial irregularities that suggested money laundering. Daniel Brooks ruled through fear because he thought nobody would challenge him. But fear makes people careless. He never bothered hiding his methods because he believed his position made him invincible. He was wrong. I wasn't just building an HR complaint. I was building a federal case. And I was almost ready to present it to FinCEN when he decided to assault me. After I left the conference room, I could see through the glass walls as my colleagues exchanged uncomfortable glances. Nobody followed me. Nobody asked if I was okay. They just sat there pretending nothing had happened. Patricia from HR actually opened her laptop and started typing, probably crafting a report that would somehow blame me for the incident. That's how it worked at Pinnacle. The victim was always the problem. But in 57 minutes, everything would change. When my father walked through that door with his federal badge and his authority, those same people who ignored my assault would suddenly have very different attitudes. I went to my office and pulled out the encrypted external drive where I kept copies of all my evidence. 3 years of Daniel Brooks' financial crimes, documented and organized. Bank routing numbers, transaction patterns, client communications, and internal memos that showed a clear pattern of money laundering through our client trust accounts. I sent one text to my workgroup chat. Official federal investigation begins in 1 hour. Hope everyone remembers exactly what they witnessed today. The typing in the conference room stopped. The murmurs died. For the first time in my 3 years at Pinnacle, the office fell completely silent. 57 minutes after the slap, the conference room door opened again. This time, everyone looked up to see a man in a charcoal suit walking in with unmistakable federal authority. He had my eyes but carried himself like someone who had spent 20 years taking down financial criminals. Daniel Brooks was still there, probably celebrating his show of dominance. His smug expression evaporated when he saw the badge clipped to my father's belt. Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, Special Agent in Charge. "Good afternoon," my father said, his voice carrying the quiet power of federal law enforcement. "I'm Special Agent Roberto, FinCEN. I understand there was a violent incident here approximately 1 hour ago involving financial documents." The color drained from Daniel Brooks' face faster than water down a drain. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. "I'll need everyone to remain seated while I conduct preliminary interviews," Dad continued, placing a digital recorder on the table. "This is now an active federal investigation into both workplace violence and potential financial crimes." Patricia from HR tried to speak up. "Agent Roberto, I think there might be some misunderstanding about what happened here." "No misunderstanding," my father replied without looking at her. His eyes were locked on Daniel Brooks. "Physical assault in connection with financial record tampering is a federal crime. Someone want to tell me exactly what happened when my daughter tried to discuss those missing trust account funds?" The silence was deafening. That evening, I sat in my father's hotel room as he reviewed the evidence I had been collecting for 3 years. He had canceled his flight back to Washington to handle my case personally. "Workplace violence is serious," he said, spreading documents across the desk. "But this financial evidence you've gathered, this is the real story. Money laundering, client trust fund violations, wire fraud, and systematic document falsification." I handed him the encrypted drive containing every piece of evidence I had collected. His eyebrows raised as he scrolled through transaction after transaction showing clear patterns of financial crimes. "This is exceptional investigative work, Mija. You could have been a federal agent yourself." "I learned from the best," I smiled. "Tomorrow we're filing complaints with FinCEN, the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, and the local prosecutor's office. Assault with intent to conceal financial crimes. They'll have to respond immediately." But I wasn't just going after Daniel Brooks anymore. I was going after the entire system that enabled his crimes. The next morning, federal subpoenas hit Pinnacle Financial like a hurricane. Court orders for all electronic records, demands for client trust account documentation, requests for employee communications going back 5 years. The company's legal team scrambled like ants when their hill gets kicked. But they made a critical error. Someone in their IT department started deleting files. My father's cybercrime unit caught them in the act through a digital forensics sweep. Destroying evidence during a federal investigation is obstruction of justice, Dad explained over lunch. And it proves consciousness of guilt. They just turned a workplace violence case into a full-scale financial crimes conspiracy. Amateur mistake that shows they know exactly what they're hiding. The company's stock price dropped 12 points when news of the federal investigation leaked. Their lawyers were calling every hour, trying to schedule damage control meetings. But there's no controlling a FinCEN investigation once it starts rolling. When you assault a federal agent's daughter to conceal money laundering, you've crossed a line that leads straight to federal prison. By afternoon, 3 more employees had come forward with evidence of Daniel Brooks' financial crimes. Each one provided another piece of the money laundering puzzle. The avalanche had started and nothing could stop it now. The retaliation came exactly as I expected. Monday morning, I was called into HR and informed that I was being placed on administrative leave pending investigation. They tried to frame it as standard procedure, but we all knew it was punishment for reporting assault. My company email was disabled within an hour. My access badge was deactivated. Security escorted me out like I was a criminal instead of the victim who had been attacked. But they underestimated me again. For coworkers secretly forwarded me internal messages mocking my situation. Messages like Princess finally learned her place and that she won't be questioning reports anymore. Every message went directly to my father's investigation team and our attorney. Each one became evidence of retaliation and hostile work environment. They're making this too easy, our lawyer said during our conference call. Every action they take just strengthens our case exponentially. By placing me on leave immediately after reporting assault, they had committed another federal violation. The company was digging their own grave with every illegal decision. My father suggested I reach out to former employees who had left under suspicious circumstances. I found their contact information through LinkedIn and professional networks, sending carefully worded messages. The responses were shocking. One by one, they shared their own Daniel Brooks horror stories that had never been reported because they were too frightened or ashamed to speak up. Angela told me how Daniel Brooks had cornered her in the file room and made threats about her immigration status when she questioned unusual cash transactions. She resigned within a week. Robert described how Daniel Brooks forced him to process suspicious international wire transfers by threatening to report him to regulators for imaginary compliance violations. He left the financial industry entirely. Most damaging was Kevin's story. He had been offered a substantial severance package to sign a non-disclosure agreement after discovering Daniel Brooks' money laundering scheme. The company paid him $80,000 to stay quiet about financial crimes. But federal investigations override NDAs when crimes are involved. Kevin provided us with recorded phone calls where executives offered him hush money. He had kept the recordings as insurance, never knowing they would become evidence in a federal case. We weren't dealing with isolated incidents anymore. We were uncovering a systematic criminal enterprise with multiple victims and institutional cover-ups. Our attorney decided it was time for strategic media exposure. She contacted a financial journalist who specialized in corporate fraud stories and leaked carefully selected details about the case. The article went live at 6 a.m. with a headline, "Federal Agents Investigate Financial Services Firm After Executive Allegedly Assaults Employee Questioning Missing Trust Funds." By 9 a.m., it was trending on financial industry websites. By noon, 3 major business publications had picked up the story. By evening, #PinnacleSlap was trending on social media. Current and former employees started sharing their experiences in the comments. The flood of stories painted a picture of systematic financial crimes and workplace intimidation that had gone unchecked for years. Daniel Brooks tried damage control by calling an emergency all-hands meeting. According to my sources inside the company, he lost his temper when a junior analyst asked about the federal investigation. "I don't answer questions from people who don't understand how real finance works," he shouted, pointing aggressively at the young woman who had asked. Unfortunately for Daniel Brooks, the meeting was being recorded for remote employees, and his outburst was captured on video. That clip went viral within hours, generating millions of views and thousands of comments calling for his immediate arrest. The company's reputation was collapsing in real time, taking their stock price with it. Daniel Brooks' viral meltdown transformed the case from a financial crime investigation into a public relations catastrophe. The stock continued plummeting as investors lost confidence. 5 major clients terminated contracts within 72 hours, citing concerns about working with a firm under federal investigation for money laundering. The board of directors called emergency sessions to discuss leadership changes and potential bankruptcy protection. Meanwhile, our legal team received a crucial phone call. A former Pinnacle IT administrator named David reached out after seeing the news coverage. He had been laid off 8 months earlier in what the company called restructuring, but he suspected it was really because he had discovered evidence of Daniel Brooks' electronic document tampering. David had something invaluable: backup servers containing the original versions of financial reports that Daniel Brooks had altered. Reports showing the true extent of the money laundering operation and which senior executives knew about it. "I kept these as insurance," David explained. "I figured someday I might need proof of what really happened in that place." Those backup servers contained enough evidence to expand our case from workplace violence and individual fraud into a full-scale RICO investigation. Daniel Brooks had no idea his digital footprints were about to destroy not just his career, but his freedom. The company's insurance attorneys made their first settlement offer, $1.2 million in exchange for signing a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and dropping all charges. I laughed when our lawyer read the proposal over the phone. "Counteroffer," I told her. $4 million, no NDA, public admission of wrongdoing, Daniel Brooks' immediate termination, and independent federal monitoring of all financial operations for 5 years. "That's very aggressive," she warned. "They allowed a money launderer to assault me when I tried to expose his crimes. If they want to settle, they can pay premium prices for the privilege of avoiding a public trial." The real leverage wasn't just my assault case anymore. David's backup servers had revealed systematic client trust fund violations affecting hundreds of accounts. FinCEN was now investigating potential violations of the Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering statutes. A public trial would expose everything: the cover-ups, the hush money, the systematic financial crimes, the regulatory violations. The company would face criminal charges, massive civil penalties, and loss of their financial services licenses. $4 million was actually a bargain compared to what they would lose in a federal prosecution. But I wasn't feeling generous. They had 3 weeks to accept our terms or face us in federal court. The company rejected our settlement offer, apparently believing their high-powered law firm could minimize the damage. Their attorneys seemed confident that a single slap wouldn't justify massive damages, and they underestimated the financial crimes evidence. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My legal team spent the next month preparing for trial. We had security footage of the assault, recorded witness statements, evidence of systematic retaliation, proof of document destruction, and now David's servers showing years of financial crimes and cover-ups. Daniel Brooks' lawyers tried a desperate character assassination strategy. They claimed I was a disgruntled employee who had provoked the incident and was exploiting it for financial gain while hiding my own incompetence as a forensic accountant. But when you assault someone in front of witnesses to conceal money laundering, character attacks don't work very well. The morning before jury selection, I received an unexpected visitor outside the federal courthouse. A woman in her 40s approached me and introduced herself as Linda, a former Pinnacle compliance officer who had been forced out 2 years earlier. "I've been following your case," she said. "I have something Daniel Brooks doesn't know I kept." She handed me a flash drive. These are recordings of executive meetings where Daniel Brooks and other senior managers discussed how to handle regulatory inquiries about suspicious transactions. They planned the cover-up in detail. Another nail in Daniel Brooks' coffin, delivered at the perfect moment. Linda's recordings were absolutely devastating. Hours of audio where Daniel Brooks and other executives openly discussed methods for concealing suspicious transactions from regulatory scrutiny, coordinating false statements to auditors, and identifying employees who posed threats to their operations. In one particularly damning conversation, Daniel Brooks actually bragged about intimidating previous employees who had questioned financial irregularities. He used the exact phrase, "Sometimes you have to get physical with people who don't understand their place." The recordings also revealed that Pinnacle's board of directors knew about Daniel Brooks' methods and chose to enable them because his department was generating enormous profits through their criminal activities. They had created a system where financial crimes were acceptable as long as they didn't hurt the bottom line. My father's investigation team authenticated the recordings and added them to the federal case. What started as workplace violence had become a racketeering conspiracy involving multiple executives and board members. The company's insurance attorneys started calling multiple times per day, desperately begging for new settlement negotiations. Their potential liability had grown beyond anything they had imagined. But I was finished negotiating. This was going to trial, and Daniel Brooks was going to face the consequences of his actions in front of a federal jury. The trial date was set for 8 weeks away. 8 weeks for them to panic while we prepared to present our case. For weeks before trial, a joint FBI FinCEN task force raided Pinnacle's headquarters with warrants for financial records, computer systems, and communication devices. Linda's recordings had provided probable cause for charges of money laundering, wire fraud, and racketeering. I watched the news coverage from my apartment, seeing federal agents carrying boxes of evidence out of the building where Daniel Brooks had assaulted me. The same conference room where he slapped me was now being photographed as part of a crime scene. The raid triggered cascading investigations. The Securities and Exchange Commission opened an inquiry into the false financial statements I had tried to correct. The IRS began auditing the company's tax filings for unreported income. State banking regulators started reviewing their licenses to operate. Daniel Brooks was no longer just facing workplace violence charges. He was looking at federal racketeering charges, money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy. His entire world was collapsing because he couldn't control his temper for 30 seconds. The company's stock price fell below $3 per share. Half the board of directors resigned. Their largest client, representing $40 million in annual revenue, terminated their contract immediately. All because Daniel Brooks thought he could assault an employee and continue his criminal enterprise. Justice wasn't just coming, it had arrived with federal badges and handcuffs. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in federal district court. Jury selection took 3 days, and by Friday we were presenting opening statements to 12 citizens who would decide Daniel Brooks' fate. Our attorney painted a comprehensive picture of systematic financial crimes, workplace violence, and institutional corruption. Daniel Brooks' lawyer tried to portray the slap as a momentary lapse in judgment that shouldn't overshadow a distinguished career in finance. But when the prosecutor played Linda's recordings for the jury, showing this was part of a calculated criminal enterprise, Daniel Brooks' defense strategy collapsed completely. The most powerful moment came when I testified about the assault itself. I described the shock, the humiliation, and the fear of being physically attacked for doing my job honestly. "How did you feel when your colleagues remained silent?" our attorney asked. "Abandoned," I answered. Like my safety and professional integrity meant nothing to them. When Daniel Brooks' lawyer cross-examined me, he suggested I had been confrontational in questioning the financial discrepancies. "So, you're saying I deserve to be assaulted for accurately reporting potential money laundering?" I asked. He had no good answer, and the jury's expressions showed they didn't appreciate his victim-blaming approach. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty of assault, creating a hostile work environment, conspiracy to commit money laundering, wire fraud, and racketeering. Daniel Brooks was found personally liable for $3.8 million in damages to me, plus punitive damages and legal fees totaling another $2.1 million. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was watching Daniel Brooks' face as each guilty verdict was read. For the first time in his career, he was being held completely accountable for his actions. The judge also ordered Pinnacle Financial to implement federal monitoring of all financial operations for 7 years, establish a victim compensation fund, and submit to regular compliance audits. Daniel Brooks' criminal sentencing was scheduled for the following month. The federal charges carried a potential prison sentence of 12 to 15 years. As I walked out of the courthouse, reporters asked how I felt about the verdict. "Justice works," I said simply. "It takes time, but it always finds the truth." Pinnacle Financial tried to rebuild after the trial, but the damage was too extensive. They hired a new executive team, restructured their entire compliance department, and launched a public rehabilitation campaign. But it was too late. The scandal had exposed too much about their corporate culture and criminal operations. Clients didn't trust them with their money. Investors were fleeing. Regulatory agencies were watching their every transaction. Within 8 months, they had lost 60% of their client base. Within 18 months, they were filing for bankruptcy protection under Chapter 11. Daniel Brooks' criminal trial resulted in a 14-year federal prison sentence. He was also banned from working in financial services for life and ordered to pay $8.2 million in restitution to defrauded clients. His wife divorced him during the trial. His country club expelled him. His professional network abandoned him completely. The man who had terrorized an entire company was now a federal prisoner with no future in his chosen field. My story wasn't ending with Daniel Brooks' imprisonment. It was beginning a new chapter focused on systemic change. Job offers started arriving from financial firms across the country. Senior forensic accountant positions, compliance director roles, opportunities to build clean operations with ethical cultures. But I turned them all down. After everything I had experienced, I didn't want to work within broken systems anymore. I wanted to fix them. Using part of my settlement, I founded a nonprofit organization called Financial Justice Advocates, dedicated to helping employees safely report financial crimes and workplace abuse in the financial services industry. My father joined as senior advisor, bringing his FinCEN expertise to help whistleblowers navigate complex federal reporting requirements. David volunteered to help with cybersecurity, ensuring our clients' evidence was properly protected from retaliation. Within 6 months, we had helped 18 financial services employees successfully report and resolve workplace abuse and fraud cases. Within a year, we were working directly with federal agencies to develop new whistleblower protection standards. Financial Justice Advocates wasn't about revenge or compensation. It was about preventing other people from experiencing what I went through and ensuring that financial crimes don't hide behind workplace intimidation. 3 years after the trial, I received a case that brought everything full circle. A young forensic accountant named Carmen contacted Financial Justice Advocates about systematic fraud she had discovered at a mid-size investment firm. Her story was painfully familiar. A male supervisor who was altering client statements, stealing funds, and retaliating against anyone who questioned the numbers. "I feel invisible," she told me during our first video call. "Like nobody cares about the truth anymore." I knew exactly how she felt. We helped Carmen document the fraud, connect with specialized federal prosecutors, and file protected disclosures with appropriate agencies. Her case resulted in a major federal prosecution and significant policy changes at her firm. But more importantly, Carmen didn't have to face the situation alone. She had advocates, resources, and a clear path to justice that protected her from retaliation. "You saved my career and probably my life," she told me after her case was resolved. "No," I replied. "You saved yourself by having the courage to speak up. I just helped you find the right tools and the right people to listen." That's what Financial Justice Advocates was really about, giving people the tools and support they need to expose financial crimes safely and effectively. 6 months ago, I received a letter that I had been expecting for years. The prison return address was unmistakable, and Daniel Brooks' handwriting hadn't changed. The letter was 4 pages long, full of apologies and self-pity. He claimed he had found religion in prison and wanted to make amends for his past actions. He asked if I could help him prepare for his eventual parole hearing by providing a character reference or victim impact statement supporting his release. He wrote about the rehabilitation programs he was attending, the remorse he felt for his victims, and his plans to become a better person when he was released in 8 more years. I read the entire letter twice, remembering the man who had slapped me in front of witnesses and then tried to destroy my career for exposing his crimes. The man who had laundered millions of dollars and intimidated countless employees to protect his criminal enterprise. Then I filed the letter in my Daniel Brooks folder and never responded. Some people deserve second chances. Others need to serve their full sentences and live with the consequences of their choices. Daniel Brooks made his choices when he decided that violence and financial crimes were acceptable business practices. Now he gets to spend 14 years thinking about those choices. Financial Justice Advocates has grown beyond my wildest expectations. We now have offices in 18 cities and have helped over 600 financial services employees resolve fraud and abuse cases. We've partnered with law schools to provide free legal clinics, worked with federal agencies to strengthen whistleblower protections, and lobbied for enhanced penalties for workplace violence in financial institutions. The ripple effects of my case continue expanding. Daniel Brooks' convictions set federal precedents that prosecutors use in similar cases involving financial crimes and workplace violence. Pinnacle's collapse led to industry-wide changes in compliance monitoring and employee protection protocols. Most importantly, financial services employees are speaking up more frequently and more effectively. They understand their rights better, document evidence more carefully, and demand accountability from their employers and regulators. The culture of silence that protected Daniel Brooks and others like him is finally breaking down. That's the real victory, not the settlement money, not the headlines, not even Daniel Brooks' prison sentence. The real victory is that fewer people will suffer in silence because of what we accomplished together. Last week, I received an email from a recent college graduate who had read about my case in her financial crimes investigation course. She was starting her first job as a junior auditor and wanted advice about recognizing and reporting financial irregularities. I wrote back with practical guidance, document everything with dates and details. Understand your legal protections as a whistleblower. Build relationships with trustworthy colleagues and supervisors. Never ignore evidence of financial crimes, no matter how politically dangerous it might seem. But the most important thing I told her was this: your professional integrity matters more than any job. Your voice has power. And you have federal law enforcement agencies specifically designed to protect people like you when you do the right thing. That 22-year-old auditor has more power than she realizes. She has the power to prevent financial crimes that could harm thousands of investors. She has the power to protect colleagues from workplace abuse. She has the power to demand ethical behavior from financial institutions. The next generation of financial professionals won't accept the culture of fear and criminality that protected people like Daniel Brooks for so long. They'll expect better, demand better, and create better institutions for everyone. 5 years have passed since Daniel Brooks' hand struck my face in that conference room. 5 years since I made the phone call that changed everything for both of us. Financial Justice Advocates now operates in 32 states and has helped over 1,500 financial services employees find justice. We've secured over $200 million in settlements and judgments for fraud and abuse victims. We've helped pass new laws in 20 states strengthening financial whistleblower protections. Daniel Brooks is serving year 6 of his 14-year sentence in federal prison, working in the prison library for 23 cents per hour. His appeals have been exhausted. His assets have been liquidated to pay victim restitution. His life is permanently diminished by the choices he made. Meanwhile, I'm testifying before congressional committees about financial crimes enforcement. I'm consulting with major financial institutions on building ethical cultures. I'm training the next generation of forensic accountants and compliance professionals. The difference between us isn't luck or connections or natural ability. The difference is that when faced with financial crimes and workplace violence, I chose to fight back with evidence, federal law, and unwavering determination to see justice done. Daniel Brooks chose intimidation, violence, and criminal conspiracy. He thought his position made him untouchable. I proved that federal law applies to everyone, especially those who abuse positions of trust in financial institutions. And the best part? I never raised my voice or lost my temper. I just documented everything carefully and made one phone call to my father. That's all it took to bring down a criminal enterprise and change an entire industry.